Welcome. It's wonderful to have both Bristow and KP families come together this evening for our presentation regarding the school-wide reading of Tory Maldonado's novel, What Lane? Before we proceed with the presentation, I want to introduce tonight's presenters. Library Media Specialist from Bristow, Melissa Tom. KP Media Specialist, Dave St. Germain. There he is. Social Studies teacher, Rebecca Lewis. And Aya Mustafa, formerly from Bristow, language arts teacher. Assistant Principal, Mr. Gussie.
Good evening, everyone.
And I'm Mark Kotler, KP Assistant Principal also. Let's begin the show.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kotler. So just to explain why we're providing this, we want you to understand what it is that we're doing both at King Philip and Bristow over the next few weeks. All students and advisories in grades 6, 7, and 8, we're going to listen to and read the novel, What Lane? By Tory Maldonado. So this is a coming-of-age story about a boy who's trying to figure out where he fits in, just like so many of our early adolescents at Bristow and King Philip. So each week, we're going to read and listen to a few chapters together, and then students are going to have the opportunity to reflect in writing and share their reflections if they so choose. Students are also going to be brainstorming questions to ask Tory Maldonado during an author's visit that we hope to host after we read the book. But I know even if we don't have that author's visit necessarily, that Mr. Maldonado will be able to respond to a lot of our students' questions and ideas and comments. So just for some context, if you're watching this event or participating in this, you might have listened in prior to the holiday break when Principals Wright and Ellis and Clapsaddle provided some information about advisory and how we're focusing on social justice and social emotional learning really specifically through our advisory programs throughout this year. Over the past couple years, we've had an increasing focus on equity and diversity. And now we're trying to shift more towards a whole school, or what we would call in education or public health or whatever, a tier 1 approach, really including everybody. So we've really spent a good chunk of time with the staff, with each other over the past couple of years, really trying to move each other along that cultural competence continuum from consciousness towards responsiveness and advocacy. So we've run through the implicit association tests, done some anti-bias professional learning, provided lots of materials and resources to help each other learn about the world around us, learn about ourselves and our biases, and help each other check each other in the ways that we work with each other and with students. Some of our student-focused efforts have not really been whole school. They've been, we had the ADL in maybe 5 years ago for a presentation that they did. It was kind of one-off. We have partnered with the NCCJ for the past several years at King Philip and run a diversity club. I started that, and Miss Lewis and a few others have taken over and really taken off with that. And you know, that's been great, but it's kind of a small group of students. We've also had kids go to Kids Speak and participate in Kids Court, which is through the University of Connecticut Law School and Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities. Again, though, it's a smaller group of students. And then over the past couple of years, Ms. Lewis has run our 8th grade identity forums. It was one team initially, and then last year was our whole 8th grade. Again, it was a great event, but it was one event. You know, there was some pre-work and some follow-up, but this advisory work is really involving not just a small group or a team or a grade level, but our entire school and really the whole community in West Hartford Public Schools, not just King Philip. So, you know, it happens to be that we found time to do this right around Martin Luther King Day as well. So it's the work that we're doing is, I think, honoring Dr. King's legacy And we spent a lot of time the first half of the year really digging into identity. And this is going to help us transition from that focus on identity, and it works really well with that, and shifting towards talking about diversity with each other and with our students. So it's a kind of natural evolution or a continuation of this SEL or social emotional learning work we've been doing, as well as the social justice work that we're trying to do through our advisory. On top of all this, it's also helping us integrate some literacy skills and practice into advisory. So I've talked a little bit about where we've been, why we're doing this to some extent, and we're going to get a little bit more detail from each of the people on this panel tonight who have put some work into this. But I just want to give a quick opportunity for the author to tell you a little bit about the book in his own words. So if you bear with me for just a moment, I will share a video from Mr. Tory Maldonado. There it is. Oh, I apologize. Okay, this time should work.
Hi, my name is Tory Maldonado, and I am the author of 3 Penguin Random House books, Secret Saturdays, Type, and also my newest, What Lane. And What Lane recently made Oprah Magazine's list of essential books to use with tweens and teens to discuss race and what we're seeing right now. The New York Times also listed it for that reason. And this is a book that's close to my heart because the title, What Lane? What lane? A lot of us have heard, stay in your lane. Well, what does that mean? And what does that mean as it relates to race? I've been teaching for over 20 years, and I've heard kids told in the middle school where I teach, stay in your lane. And that could be very limiting. And that's not my sentiment. That's the sentiment of the kids telling me that any lane belongs to them. So I'd like to read you a scene from What Lane. And in this scene, we're going to look for when both boys are being allies to each other, when they're being friends to each other. Also, as you listen to the scene, listen for the difference and the similarity between both boys. Now, the character here is Stephen. He's the main character. And his name is Stephen because he's a lookalike of Stephen Curry.
Okay, I apologize for that technical difficulty. So that's just a little bit of information from
What's a little bit of a tease. We now get to go ahead and have to read the book a little bit more to find out what he was going to say. So I think it's great.
Thank you,
Thanks
Justin.
for that, Mr. Gusty.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gusty, and thank you, Tory Maldonado, for that. So this actually brings us to our goals and rationale slide. We want our students to really embrace one another, to accept people for who they are, to know how to relate to one another, and how to understand themselves. And our goals and our rationales really reflect that. We're going to facilitate student reflection and conversation. So we'll be having discussion questions as well as journaling prompts for the students to respond to privately. We're also going to engage in informal discussions on identity, friendship, race, and fitting in, which are some of the themes or the big topics that you'll find in the book, What Lane. We also want to continue to build a community around a shared experience of reading a book together. And finally, to create a brave space for students to think about and to discuss identity. Now, Keserian Ngera is a Maasai greeting that means, how are the children? It's been our newly adopted motto from WHPS's EDC Equity and Diversity Committee this year, and it's made its way across the district. It reminds us to keep our students at the forefront of all of our ideas and all of our actions this year. Now on this slide, you'll see that there's some information about the standards from Teaching Tolerance's anti-bias framework. You can click on the link for more information about the focus of our journaling and our discussion questions. The broad topics overall are identity, diversity, justice, and action. And the key standards that you'll see here ensure that all students will develop language and historical and cultural knowledge that affirm and accurately describe their membership in multiple identity groups. They'll be able to recognize stereotypes and relate to people as individuals rather than representatives of groups. They'll express empathy when people are excluded or mistreated because of their identities, and concern when they themselves experience bias. And finally, they'll speak up with courage and respect when they or someone else has been wronged or hurt. So Becca's going to tell us a little bit about what a typical week would look like through this book.
Thank you, Aya. So each week, our students will spend 4 of the days listening to the story, or their teacher will be reading it to them. And so twice a week, students will solely listen during advisory. And then twice a week, students will have the opportunity to reflect in their journals with some guided questions that we'll look at in a moment. And the journal questions are really meant to initiate thinking and time for students to reflect both on the book and their individual experiences. So we're not going to watch this video right now, but this presentation will be published if you would like to watch this video. And this is how we started the conversation about race with our students. Race and racism is something that is discussed in the book. And so this was a way for us to initiate that conversation with the students. As well as we made sure that there were common definitions around racism, oppression, anti-racism, bias, and prejudice for our students. And then we had them look at, even in the first few chapters, how have we already seen racism in these chapters? And so they're already able to make connections to what they see in the book, as well as what they've experienced themselves.
So this is an excellent example of a slide that the students will be able to see and that they'll be able to choose from after they've read chapters 1 through 5, for example. The choices are, of course, based on students' level of comfort. Each question itself is connected back to a social justice standard from the Teaching Tolerance Anti-Bias Framework. Now, when the students respond to these questions, to whichever question they choose, we make sure that the answers will be private, ungraded, and we want students to feel that this is a space where they can safely reflect and practice their own self-awareness before they would like to share it with others. Students can, of course, choose to share it with others or not, but at the end, after we've finished reflecting and we've finished using the journals, students can choose to either take their journals home at the end or keep them at school. Now, after we've read all of the whole entire book, we'll have some closure activities at the end. So we have 2 options. There are options that the teachers can choose, and they can apply the whole thing for the entire advisory group, or the teachers can share all of the options with the students and let the students individually choose which they would like to choose. So we have option number 1 here, which is the Flipgrid assignment. And this is where students get to create a 30 to 45-second Flipgrid assignment to discuss the importance of being able to switch lanes, just like we heard Tory discuss it a few minutes ago, or discuss their experiences of not staying in one lane. The next option is the identity Venn diagram. It's where students get to complete a Venn diagram containing pictures and words about how others see them, words and pictures that describe how they see themselves, as well as words and pictures that describe how they wish other people viewed them. And then finally, our last option are the wristband sayings. So throughout the book, Stefan wears a wristband that says what lane on it, and his friend wears another wristband that says BLM, for Black Lives Matter. So students are going to create a wristband themselves, or a mock wristband that the teacher will end up printing out at the end of the project. And link together and create a chain for the classroom. So we'll be able to decorate our advisory room with those sayings. Now, Rebecca is going to go ahead and tell us a little bit about the information that was provided to the advisors to give them some guidance as to how to discuss difficult conversations.
So we realized that within this book, there are crucial conversations that we want to have with students, and that these can bring up some challenging moments for teachers to do well. And so we made sure to give the teachers who are running advisories necessary guidance to be successful in these moments. And so these are a few of the examples of the guidance that we provided. The first one being that it's okay to say that you are unsure as a teacher and take time to ask a colleague or ask someone who's an expert in the field, and then return to that student, return to your advisory with more information at a later date. So making sure that our teachers know they do not need to be the expert in every moment, but they can leave space to come back to. We also talked about ways to address Mr. Gussie, can you go back one slide, please? Thank you. Inappropriate questions, and recognizing that these questions can come out of two things. Sometimes it is a student not understanding why something may be inappropriate. And that's a moment where we want to recognize that, yes, this is inappropriate and explain why. And in other moments, we also might want to realize that they might be thinking they're making a joke and recognize why that joke is inappropriate. And finally, we also talked with our teachers about making sure we don't tokenize our marginalized group. And for students of color who want to share, giving them the space, but not expecting them and not making them the token. And then these are just some additional strategies we discussed with teachers about interrupting, questioning, educating, echoing, as well as honoring the experience of the oppressed or the marginalized groups. Go ahead, Mr. Gussie.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say, if you're a parent at home thinking about, well, how can I speak with my child about what they're reading, what they're talking about in advisory with their advisor and their co-advisees, some of the strategies here and on the previous slide are things that you can think about as a parent or a caregiver as well. And then finally, we have one more slide we'd like to share with you before we'll have an opportunity for questions in the chat if the chat's working. My understanding is that it might not be, but we're going to talk about how you could ask questions and contact us after this last slide. Okay.
And so, yay, it's the librarian part. This is a screenshot of our Sora. That is the tool that students use for digital books, audio, and ebooks. All students have access to Sora in all of the middle schools. We share the same collection. Ms. McNeese at Sedgwick, Mr. St. Germain at KP, and myself at Bristow work really hard to curate a really high quality collection of a variety of different types of books, mostly fiction in this format. And so this is one of the collections that we have been working on for a while, and we are continuously adding to it. And the collection is called This List is Anti-Racist. And it includes a variety of, like I said, predominantly fiction books that students can access and parents can access through their child's account. So if you're not sure how to access Sora or your student does not know, they all have been given a lesson at least once probably this year, but they may not, it might not have stuck. You can contact your librarian or go to the website for each of the librarian pages, and there's probably a short tutorial screencast on how to log in with their Google and just browse, and you might find a family read you want to listen to or an ebook you want to share, or just to curate lists for yourself to then go to the public library if you would like a print copy. And the majority of these titles we also have on the shelf in print form. So just so you're aware that there's a lot of different options that your child and you can access to our libraries at the schools.
Okay, thank you very much, Melissa and Rebecca and Aya. and Mark and Mr. St. Germain, I really appreciate all your work. Number one, to help our colleagues do this well. And I also want to give a shout out to the language arts teachers that worked over the summer to do some of the initial groundwork, writing discussion questions, identifying important points in the text for us to focus our discussions on with our advisees. So it's really been a community effort, and we're glad that Bristow is partnering with us in this. And I know that Sedgwick has their own text that they're using kind of in conjunction with the RLE. But we're really glad to be doing this work with through our advisory group. And it's great to have a text to focus on and characters to focus on. So we're not just talking about our own personal experiences, which can be difficult at times, but we all kind of have a shared content that we can talk about because we're going to all have the same book that we're reading together. So I'm seeing a few comments in the chat, but it looks like Mr. St. Germain is addressing the questions, and please feel free to reach out to myself, your child's advisor, anybody here on this call, and we'd be happy to discuss what you're thinking about it, what questions you might have, and definitely any suggestions you have for how we could keep growing and getting better together as a school and a community. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.